In 1993, the world celebrated when Pablo Escobar was killed, thinking his reign of terror was finally over. They were wrong. The man was gone, but his criminal blueprint is more powerful today than ever. From the way drugs are trafficked to how pop culture romanticizes outlaws, the ghost of his empire is still pulling the strings of our modern world. Today, we're uncovering the 7 shocking ways Escobar's empire still controls the world. Pablo Escobar. The name alone brings up images of obscene wealth, unthinkable violence, and a man who brought an entire nation to its knees. At his peak, he was one of the richest criminals in history, with an empire built on a mountain of cocaine. So when he was gunned down on a Medellin rooftop in 1993, governments cheered. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief. The thinking was, the king is dead, so the kingdom will crumble. But that was a dangerously naive assumption. Decades later, the systems he created, the roots he carved out, and the culture he fostered haven't just survived, they've metastasized. Escobar didn't just sell drugs, he created a global franchise model for organized crime. It's a model that's been copied, scaled up, and perfected by a new generation. The truth is, the end of Pablo Escobar was just the beginning of his real influence. His empire's ghost is all around us, and its control is deeper and more shocking than you can imagine. The foundation of Escobar's empire was simple: go big. He turned cocaine from a boutique drug into a global commodity. He didn't invent the trade, but he perfected its logistics, transforming small-time farm operations into a continent-spanning assembly line. At the height of his power, the Medellin cartel was believed to supply up to 80% of the cocaine pouring into the United States. It was a scale the world had never seen, and many thought it would die with him. They were wrong. Today, cocaine production hasn't just bounced back. It has shattered every record Escobar ever set. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, global cocaine production hit an all-time high in 2023, reaching a mind-boggling 3,708 tons. That represents a nearly 34% jump in a single year, an explosion that makes Escobar's peak operations look modest. Colombia, his old turf, is still the epicenter, responsible for most of the world's coca cultivation. What's changed is the method. The huge, vulnerable labs Escobar favored have been replaced by a decentralized, almost corporate efficiency. Instead of one kingpin, a network of specialized groups now handles different stages of production. These aren't the rustic jungle labs of the 80s. Today's operations are sophisticated super farms and processing facilities hidden deep in regions controlled by armed groups, including former FARC dissidents who rejected the 2016 peace deal. This production boom is fueled by a parallel surge in demand. The UNODC reports that the number of global cocaine users has swelled dramatically, from around 17 million people in 2013 to an estimated 25 million by 2023. This creates what one official called a vicious cycle, where more users drive more production, which pushes traffickers to find and create new markets. While North America and Europe are still the biggest consumers, traffickers are aggressively pushing into new territories across Asia and Africa, creating new hotspots for addiction and violence. Escobar built a blueprint for mass production that was so effective, it outlived him by decades. He proved that with enough ambition and brutality, a criminal could operate on the scale of a multinational corporation. The modern cartels learned that lesson all too well. They've taken his model, refined it with new technology, and unleashed a torrent of cocaine on the world that even the king of cocaine himself might find shocking. Plata o Plomo, silver or lead. It was Pablo Escobar's infamous policy, a simple, brutal choice he offered to police, judges, politicians, and journalists: take a bribe or take a bullet. This wasn't just a threat. It was a campaign of terror waged by a single man against a country. It was the engine of his power, used to corrupt and dismantle the Colombian state from the inside out. He turned officials into accomplices and dissenters into corpses. This campaign reached its horrific peak with acts like the 1989 bombing of Avianca Flight 203, a commercial airliner blown out of the sky just to kill a political candidate, murdering 110 innocent people in the process. After Escobar's death, many hoped this hyperviolent model of drug trafficking would fade away. Instead, it went global. The Plata o Plomo doctrine has been exported and adapted by a new generation of criminal groups, turning once peaceful regions into battlegrounds. Look no further than Ecuador. For years, it was known as an island of peace, tucked between the cocaine-producing giants of Colombia and Peru. As recently as 2020, its homicide rate was low for Latin America. Today, it has one of the highest in the world. The country is being torn apart as international cartels, especially Albanian and Mexican factions, fight for control of its strategic ports. These ports are crucial exit points for cocaine headed to Europe and North America. In just a few years, the homicide rate skyrocketed, increasing more than fivefold between 2020 and 2023. This violence isn't random. It's the Escobar playbook in action. Gangs use massacres and public executions to terrify the public and assert control, just as he did in Medellin. The nation was plunged into a state of internal armed conflict after cartel members stormed a live TV studio with explosives and prisoners took guards hostage on camera, a chilling echo of Escobar's war on the Colombian state. And this violence isn't just in Latin America. The new front lines of the cocaine trade are in the ports of Europe. Cities like Antwerp and Rotterdam have become trafficking epicenters, and where the cocaine goes, violence follows. Criminal groups from the Western Balkans, particularly the Albanian mafia, have become dominant by controlling key logistics hubs. They've grown so powerful that authorities report they now run the drug markets in certain areas, using a level of brutality that has pushed out rivals. This isn't just about moving a product, it's about establishing dominance through fear. Assassinations, kidnappings, and even the discovery of shipping containers converted for torture have become trademarks of Europe's new drug wars, a direct inheritance of the Plata o Plomo philosophy. Escobar's most terrifying legacy isn't the memory of his violence, but the living, breathing reality of it in new corners of the globe. He proved that extreme violence wasn't a byproduct of the drug trade, it was its most effective business tool. Today, from the streets of Guayaquil to the docks of Antwerp, criminals are proving him right, one bullet at a time. The links between Escobar's past and our present are chilling, and we're just getting started. If you're finding this look into the hidden structures of the criminal world fascinating, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We explore topics like this every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, back to the Empire's ghost. Pablo Escobar had a problem that's hard to even wrap your head around. He had too much cash. At the cartel's peak, it was reportedly bringing in so much physical money that laundering it all was impossible. His brother and chief accountant, Roberto Escobar, famously claimed they spent about $2,500 a month on rubber bands just to bundle the bills. He also said they would write off 10% of their earnings, a jaw-dropping sum of over $2 billion a year, because rats would eat the cash in storage or it would be ruined by water. Faced with this tidal wave of money, Escobar turned to a simple solution. He buried it. All over Colombia, in fields, inside the walls of houses, and in secret jungle caches, his men buried hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars. These hidden fortunes are known as guacas. And while some have been found over the years, it's widely believed that a huge portion of his wealth is still out there, a sleeping dragon of illicit cash scattered across the country. This isn't just a historical fun fact. This squirrel empire of buried cash directly destabilizes the present. For decades, these hidden stashes have acted as a shadow bank for the criminal underworld. When a cache is discovered, it provides a massive, untraceable cash infusion to local gangs. A find of a few $1 million can arm a small army, fund a new trafficking operation, or corrupt an entire local police force. It's seed money for the next generation of crime. As recently as 2020, Escobar's own nephew claimed he found a bag with $18 million in cash hidden in the wall of one of his uncle's apartments. But his financial influence goes way beyond buried bills. Escobar pioneered large-scale money laundering, and the techniques he developed are still in use, just in more sophisticated forms. He poured dirty money into real estate, art, and legitimate businesses, a tactic that not only cleaned his cash, but twisted the real Colombian economy. Today's cartels have taken this a step further, using global financial systems and cryptocurrency to launder their profits. But the principle is the same: blend illicit money into the legal economy to make it untouchable. The global illicit economy, encompassing crimes like drug trafficking, is now estimated to be worth trillions of dollars, with some estimates placing it as high as $4.4 trillion. This tidal wave of dirty money warps housing markets, corrupts political systems, and bankrolls ever-expanding criminal enterprises, a financial empire built on a foundation of Escobar's buried billions. Let's be clear, Pablo Escobar was a mass murderer. He was a narco-terrorist who killed thousands, police officers, judges, politicians, and hundreds of innocent civilians. Yet if you look him up today, you're just as likely to find a t-shirt celebrating him as a rebel hero as you are an article detailing his atrocities. This might be his most insidious legacy, the transformation of his image from monster to myth, from terrorist to pop culture brand. This wasn't an accident. Escobar himself carefully built a Robin Hood persona. He spent millions building houses and soccer fields for the poor in Medellin, and he sponsored local sports teams. This philanthropy bought him the loyalty of the city's underclass, creating a human shield of popular support that frustrated the government for years. He even got himself elected to Colombia's Congress in 1982, proving his knack for manipulating public perception. Decades after his death, this myth-making has been supercharged by Hollywood. The global success of shows like Netflix's Narcos introduced Escobar to a new generation, but in a highly stylized, often romanticized way. By focusing on his charisma, his incredible wealth, and his bold defiance of the state, these portrayals often frame him as a complex anti-hero, a flawed but powerful man fighting the system. The show, often told from the perspective of the American DEA agents hunting him, can accidentally reinforce a white savior narrative while making Escobar the magnetic center of the story. This Narcos effect has real-world consequences. It has fueled a bizarre crime tourism industry in Colombia, where visitors take tour of Escobar-related sites, including his former prison mansion, La Catedral, and his grave. This glorification is deeply painful for a country still grappling with the trauma he caused. The Colombian government has even tried to ban souvenirs related to Escobar, recognizing that making a commodity out of his image makes it harder for the nation to heal. More dangerously, this glamorization of the narco life is a powerful recruitment tool for modern criminal organizations. When the life of a drug lord is presented as a path to wealth, power, and respect, it becomes a fantasy for disenfranchised youth. Narco culture, celebrated in music, fashion, and social media, presents a world of luxury cars, beautiful women, and outlaw freedom. It conveniently leaves out the reality, a life of paranoia, brutality, and an almost certain early violent death. Escobar's greatest trick wasn't smuggling cocaine, it was smuggling his own myth into the global consciousness. He built a brand, and by turning himself into a symbol of rebellion and success against all odds, he created a self-perpetuating marketing campaign for the criminal world. His legacy isn't just one of violence and drugs, but of a powerful, seductive story that continues to lure new followers into its deadly embrace. Pablo Escobar never sold a single gram of fentanyl. His empire was built entirely on an agricultural product, cocaine. But the vast, sophisticated trafficking infrastructure he created, the hidden airstrips, the semi-submersible submarines, the network of corrupt officials, and the smuggling routes through Central America and Mexico, didn't disappear when he died. Instead, this network was inherited, adapted, and ultimately repurposed by a new generation of traffickers to unleash a far deadlier plague: synthetic drugs. After the Medellin and Cali cartels were dismantled in the 1990s, a power vacuum opened up. Mexican criminal organizations, who had once been just transporters for the Colombians, seized their chance. Groups like the Sinaloa cartel took Escobar's blueprint for large-scale logistics and applied it with ruthless efficiency. They already controlled the main land routes into the United States, the world's most lucrative drug market. Now, they were in the driver's seat. The real game-changer was the shift from plant-based to synthetic drugs. Cocaine and heroin need huge tracts of land, are subject to weather, and have long production cycles. But synthetics like methamphetamine and fentanyl can be cooked up year-round in small, hidden labs, using precursor chemicals often bought legally on the global market. This is Escobar's principle of industrial-scale supply, taken to its terrifying, logical conclusion. The old cocaine routes that Escobar pioneered became the superhighways for this new synthetic flood. The same smuggling techniques, hiding drugs in commercial trucks, using front companies, and exploiting corrupt border officials, were simply used for new products. The results have been catastrophic. Fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, is now the leading cause of death for Americans under 50. Over 100,000 Americans now die from drug overdoses every year, with synthetic opioids being the main driver. This represents a diversification of the criminal portfolio that Escobar himself never achieved. Modern cartels aren't reliant on a single product. They move cocaine, meth, and fentanyl, often using the same networks. This makes them far more resilient. If a crackdown on cocaine is effective, they can just ramp up fentanyl production. Escobar's ghost haunts every step of this process. His genius was to see drug trafficking not as a crime, but as a global logistics business. He created the supply chains, the transport methods, and the corrupt networks needed to move huge amounts of product across continents. The Mexican cartels didn't have to invent this system. They just had to take it over and upgrade it for the 21st century. The routes that once carried Escobar's cocaine now carry the fentanyl that is devastating communities across North America. He may not have created the poison, but he built the delivery system. One of the most audacious stories about Pablo Escobar is his offer in the late 1980s to personally pay off Colombia's entire foreign debt, around $10 billion. In exchange, he demanded just one thing: a guarantee that he would never be extradited to the United States. The offer was a stunning display of arrogance. It was never accepted, but the message was clear. Escobar didn't see himself as a criminal hiding from the state, but as a rival power able to negotiate with it on equal terms. This was his ultimate goal, not just to get rich, but to capture the state itself. Through Plata o Plomo, bribing and killing, he systematically hollowed out Colombia's democratic institutions. He bought politicians, had judges murdered, and infiltrated the police and military. He forced the country to rewrite its constitution to ban extradition. And when that wasn't enough, he built his own luxury prison, La Catedral, where he continued to run his empire with the government's helpless consent. He wasn't just breaking the law, he was rewriting it. This playbook for creating a narco-state, a country where government institutions are so compromised by criminal interests they become tools for traffickers, is arguably Escobar's most destructive legacy. His methods have been studied and replicated by criminal organizations across the globe. In Mexico, powerful cartels have spent decades waging war against the state, using Escobar-style tactics to carve out territory where their authority is absolute. Entire local police forces have been disarmed for being on a cartel's payroll, a direct echo of how Escobar corrupted the Medellin police. The result has been a cycle of catastrophic violence and institutional decay that has cost hundreds of thousands of lives. The model is spreading. In countries with weak institutions, criminal groups are stepping into the power vacuum. As we've seen in Ecuador, the arrival of transnational drug trafficking can quickly overwhelm a state, leading to a collapse of public safety and the rule of law. In parts of West Africa, now a key transit hub for cocaine heading to Europe, drug money is corrupting politics and funding instability. Even more insidiously, Escobar's legacy has trapped nations in a war on drugs model that has been a costly failure. The hardline militarized approach, the same one used against Escobar, has been exported worldwide. Yet, the data shows it hasn't worked. Despite decades of effort and billions spent, drug production and consumption are at all-time highs. The criminal networks just adapt, becoming more decentralized, more violent, and more deeply embedded in the fabric of society. Escobar's ultimate triumph may be that he forced the world to fight a war on his terms, a war that can't be won because the enemy isn't one man, but a sprawling, corrupt system that he helped perfect. The most quantifiable legacy of Pablo Escobar's empire is the astronomical economic burden it has left on the world. The business model he perfected has spawned a global illicit drug economy that drains society through 1,000 different cuts. It starts with the cost of consumption. The total economic burden of substance abuse in the U.S., including healthcare, lost productivity, and crime, is estimated to be over $740 billion annually. The cost of illicit drugs alone accounts for hundreds of billions of that. An older 2007 estimate placed the cost of illicit drugs at $193 billion, a figure now considered a significant understatement. The opioid crisis, fueled by synthetics trafficked along Escobar's old routes, has driven these costs into the stratosphere, with some estimates putting the economic impact of opioids alone at nearly $1.5 trillion in 2020. This is the direct result of the market Escobar flooded. He turned cocaine into a mass-market product, and the public health crisis that followed has been spiraling ever since. These costs show up in emergency room visits for overdoses, long-term addiction treatment, and the immense strain on public health systems. There are the criminal justice costs, billions spent on policing, courts, and prisons for drug-related offenses. And then there are the hidden costs, lost productivity, families torn apart, and the cycles of poverty and crime that fester in communities ravaged by the drug trade. This economic drain isn't just a problem for consumer countries. In producer and transit nations, the costs are even more severe. The violence and corruption spawned by cartels destroy legitimate economic activity. Businesses are extorted, foreign investment dries up, and money is diverted from public services into security budgets. Illicit financial flows from drug trafficking and other organized crime undermine national economies, fueling corruption and distorting legal markets. Think back to Escobar's fortune, built on the suffering of millions. Now multiply that across decades and across the globe. He didn't just build a criminal enterprise. He created a parasitic economic model that has latched onto the global economy. Every dollar spent fighting the drug war, every life lost to an overdose, every community hollowed out by violence, it's all a transaction in the economy of his empire. The numbers are so large they feel abstract, but they represent a devastating drain on human potential and global prosperity, a bill that we are all, one way or another, still paying. The ghost of Pablo Escobar is more than a memory. It's an active, destructive force in our world. His death didn't end his empire, it just allowed it to evolve. The centralized, personality-driven cartel he ran has fractured into a global, decentralized network of criminal enterprises, each one a shard of his original, terrifying vision. His model for industrial-scale production has led to record-breaking levels of cocaine flooding the globe. His Plata o Plomo philosophy has been exported, turning peaceful nations into war zones. The billions he buried still finance crime, while the culture of narco-glamour he created still seduces new generations. The roots he carved through the jungle now carry a synthetic plague that kills hundreds of thousands. And the war he declared on the state has become a permanent, unwinnable conflict that drains our economies and erodes our institutions. The man is dead. But the criminal operating system he designed is now open source. It runs on the hardware of global inequality, fueled by corruption, and powered by the insatiable demand for the products he sold. The 7 shocking ways his empire still controls the world aren't separate legacies. They're the interconnected pillars of a shadow system that operates right under our noses. To understand this is to understand a fundamental truth of the modern world. We are all still living in the house that Pablo built, and his ghost is a landlord that will never let us leave. The story of Escobar's lingering influence is a complex one, with new chapters being written every day. What part of his legacy do you find the most shocking? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to understand more about the hidden forces that shape our world, make sure you're subscribed and check out our other investigations right here. Thanks for watching.